Welcome to Tech Law Talks. I am Anthony Diana, a member of Reed Smith's Tech and Data Group. In each episode of this podcast, we will discuss cutting-edge issues on technology, data, and the law. We will provide practical observations on a wide variety of technology and data topics to give you quick and actionable tips to address the issues you are dealing with every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of our EU series of the Reed Smith Tech Law Talks podcast. In today's episode, we will update you on the legal challenges in Europe regarding the use of cookies and tracking technologies. This is Ramona Kimmich and Andy Splitgerber from the Reed Smith Tech and Data team in Germany. Ramona, what's new in the European world of cookies?
Hi, Andy. Well, when all things slowed down around Christmas and in the second COVID lockdown, the EU Council came up with the new draft of the e-privacy regulation.
Was this when we already had 13 drafts of this from the Council?
Yes, exactly. But now there is some hope on the horizon that we will finally get the e-privacy regulation. At the beginning of February, the EU Council gave green light for a slightly tweaked draft, so it can now be negotiated between the EU institutions.
So the EU institutions, that's the Parliament, the Council, and the European Commission, right?
Right. On the very same day, the German Parliament came out with a draft for a new German cookie law that implements the EU Privacy Directive of 2009.
Wow, how is this called?
The name is painful. It's typically German. The Telecommunication Telemedia Data Protection Act, the TTDSG. It touches many areas in the telemedia and communication sector, but also cookies, so we can call it German cookie law. What about the other EU countries? Do they have these rules already?
Yes, Germany was the only country that had not converted the cookie directive into local law since more than 10 years. Other countries like Austria, France, Ireland, or Spain have done so. They have GDPR plus their local cookie law. The cookie laws basically require consent for dropping cookies, except where cookies are strictly necessary to operate the website, like a shopping basket cookie, for example. However, most of these countries have not enforced these cookie laws. Ireland has, for example, issued a statement that they will not enforce the use of light analytic cookies, even if no consent was obtained. We only now start seeing first enforcement in some countries. In France, for example, Google was fined 100 million euros. In Spain, Iberia Airlines and Twitter were each fined 30,000 euros for insufficient cookie practices. The Spanish cookie law provides for much lower fines than the GDPR. So, all in all, there is quite some confusion in Europe as to what laws apply, what the fines are, and where the laws actually are enforced.
Looks like the Germans are doing the same now. They break up with the legal ground of legitimate interests. And basically, the German legislator plans that you're only allowed to fire cookies if they are strictly necessary to offer the service that is explicitly requested or if you have obtained consent. And the topping of that new German cookie recipe will be that non-compliance can be fined.
That's a nice recipe. We all hate these cookie banners. And I personally think that the entire topic around data protection in cookies can only be successful if there is a more user-friendly way to track and ask for permission to track. But for today, the cookie banner, how must it look like?
For now, we have statements from the supervisory authorities that your cookie banner must have a yes and a no button on the first banner layer. We have hoped that the e-privacy regulation would build momentum regarding more innovative ways of asking for the permission to track. And it mentions so-called cookie whitelists, which can be configured by the user in the browser settings. But overall, the decision makers are very reluctant on that point.
What's the timeline that you expect for the German law and for the e-privacy regulation?
Both the e-privacy regulation and the German cookie law are in advanced drafting status. It's somewhat odd that both laws came in tandem because the German law will be redundant and replaced by the e-privacy regulation at some point.
Maybe the German legislator has its doubts whether the privacy regulation will make it through the trilogue negotiations. I mean, we already had 13 drafts. In any case, I expect that the proposed German cookie law will be agreed in the first half of this year. So especially German companies and Germany-focused websites have to keep their eyes open.
Yes, we have to wait and see how fast the e-privacy regulation will be pushed through, and I suspect this will take some time. But I believe exciting discussions are still ahead of us.
Absolutely. Thank you. This was today's episode of our EU series of the Reed Smith Tech Law Talks podcast. We thank you for listening. Please send us your feedback and comments to techlawtalks@reedsmith.com. We hope to welcome you soon in our next episode. Have a nice day.
Tech Law Talks is a Reed Smith production. Our producer is Ali McCardle. For more information about Reed Smith's tech and data practice, please email techlawtalks@reedsmith.com. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and reedsmith.com, and our social media accounts at Reed Smith LLP on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. This podcast is provided for educational purposes. It does not constitute legal advice and is not intended to establish an attorney-client relationship, nor is it intended to suggest or establish standards of care applicable to particular lawyers in any given situation. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. All rights reserved.